Hi there, I'm Acting Crimes, or Air if you prefer.
And I'm Haley, as always.
I'm Jerica.
Surprise ending, actually, this time I'm Haley.
Whoa!
Oh gosh, why are there two of us here? No one needs that.
Shamalamadand.
No, it's me, Jay, your DM. And this is Insight Check, an advice show where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions and retrieve the treasure of wisdom. So, we're gonna begin again with Dungeon Crawl. I say again as if we've just recently recorded one of these, only moments ago. But that's absurd.
Seriously.
We're gonna begin with Dungeon Crawl, a segment where we talk about what was cool and fun in board gaming and Dungeons and Dragons. That's gonna be important later. And I know that a certain someone at this table had a particular thought in mind for Dungeon Crawl this time. I'm gonna toss it to you, Jerica.
Oh, me. Ooh. Okay, so, it me as well. So I am an avid DCA fan, and that, for the uninitiated, is Dice Camera Action. Waffle Fam for life. I know that this is usually Jay's corner, but I have kicked him out of it completely, and I am sitting in it, and I have a pillow, and I'm very happy right here. I wanted to talk about my favorite moment in D&D this week, which was technically last week because the episode came out last week, but that's okay. Episode 67.
Actually, by the time this podcast comes out, it will have come out 2 weeks ago.
Well, yeah. No, whatever. Time is the enemy, as we all know. So, episode
To explain
67.
that reference, it is a line from the...
That reference is a reference to the intro to Acquisitions Inc., the C Team. We've been told we can be a little insular.
Episode 67 of Dice Camera Action featured our heroes in Chult, going through all of the forests there, and there was a lovely little exchange between Evelyn and Diath, where Evelyn asked Diath to find some chocolate, consume it, and then for her pleasure describe the taste of said chocolate. He refused because he is a practical gentleman, but they both reminisced briefly about chocolate and really showed us the core of their characters, where Evelyn was sort of sad about not being able to sense things as she once was able as a construct, and Diath being like, I don't know if I have time for this bullshit.
Yeah, Diath was a little cold during that scene, huh?
I mean, he was Diath. He was like, chocolate is chocolate. There's more important things happening.
Diath was really good in that episode, though. He took a lot of leadership role in that episode.
Yeah.
He's been kind of on a downswing lately, kind of like a little bummed, so it's cool to see him jump back up in the leadership role, being the face of the group again. The chocolate scene was really good. I agree, 100%.
Hashtag chocolate scene? Wink.
Hashtag chocolate scene probably has a much different following than you're expecting.
Yeah, you're probably right. Oh no, I didn't want to make you all sick. Too late.
Too late.
So the thing that I wanted to bring to the table this time is I wanted to finally fulfill the promise that we have repeatedly said is true, but we have not demonstrated is true, which is that this segment is about more than Dungeons and Dragons. Shut Up and Sit Down is a show where they basically review new and exciting board games that have come out. We're kind of in the middle of a golden age of board games. I don't know if you've realized this, but there are a ton of new and interesting board games being released all the time right now.
I was made aware that we are in a golden age of board games by Will Wheaton's Geek and Sundry show, Tabletop.
I was literally going to say the same thing.
Yes, it's such a good show.
Yeah, absolutely. There should definitely be a dungeon crawl about tabletop sometime. Shut Up and Sit Down, it's 2 guys, sometimes 3 guys. Once or twice it's 4 guys. But they review board games, they go over the finer points of what makes them great, and at the end, Shut Up and Sit Down either does not or does recommend the game to the audience. And sometimes they recommend it with caveats, like if you're into this genre, we would recommend it. But if you're not into this genre, it's not good enough that we would recommend it to just anybody. They can give you a deeply informed idea of whether or not you're going to enjoy the game because they explain how the game is played. They show some play. They talk about the troubles that they encountered as they played it, and they compare it to other games in the genre. They're very knowledgeable. They're super funny. And the videos are weird and interesting in a way that is delightful. Shut Up and Sit Down is a great YouTube series for anybody who's interested in getting into the hobby of board games. I cannot recommend it highly enough. I know that we also had another segment proposed for this. This time it was Haley?
Yes, there were some useful, I think, videos that we were talking about the other day by a person on the YouTubes, Don't Stop Thinking. They have a whole series, whole playlist going through all of the 5e classes and digging into them a little bit. And they go through just kind of an explanation of all of the different things that happen at different levels for those classes and some examples and explanations of things. And I actually found it was especially as a more beginning player, I kind of wished I had looked at this when I was trying to figure out what kind of character to play for our campaign, because this is very it's a little more, it might be a little more digestible for some people than the player's handbook is. If kind of digging into blocks of text isn't quite your thing, it's animated, it's got some cool graphics. So I would check out Don't Stop Thinking's YouTube channel for some good advice. Also, the class videos all have fun titles like The Fighter Class Guide, Direct the Pointy Bits at Monsters. I enjoy that. Also, for Jerica, Barbarian Class Guide, Anger is my superpower.
It's true.
Ayer, I think you were actually commenting on how good these videos were. What was it that you liked about them?
Occasionally, I actually work in the realm of creating online education materials, and I really liked how well this person put together the visuals that supported all of the class guides that they were working on. It was animated, had this very kind of cute, kind of cartoony style, but they would do things like, I watched the Bard video first because I play a Bard, and I think it's the class I'm most intimately familiar with, and so they were talking about like how Bardic Inspiration works and how many uses of it you get, so they actually brought up from the character sheet, like, you have a Charisma of 16, which means your Charisma mod is +3, which means you get 3 uses of Bardic Inspiration, and they had a picture of a D6, and as the Bard sings a little song, little caricature of this Bard, one of them fades out. So they did a lot of really good, strong visual reinforcing of the narrative that was being said over top of all the explanation of the class. I actually find that the player's handbook is a really good resource guide. Like, it's a really good textbook, but it's not always the best teacher. It's organized for like quick access to things, but I don't find it the easiest way to learn how to play the classes as much as these like guides were, because it really walks you through everything that a class can do from level 1 onwards and explains it to you in basic terms with really good visuals.
So today we're going to focus a little bit on our questions into a specific category, which is that we're going to talk about new players introducing yourself to tabletop gaming as a whole. We've saw a couple of questions that kind of went around introducing yourself to the game, and we decided to just go ahead and make that the theme of this episode's question segment. So we're just going to be specifically targeting questions around new players, what subclasses are fun to play, which are easy to pick up, and just that kind of knowledge, just sort of getting to the meat of, as a new player, what's important for me to know. And this is going to be a super brief and not super in-depth look at that, but maybe it'll give you a good place to start, and you can look to other places for more knowledge. So last time, we already gave you the best advice for a new player, or the best resource for a new player. Obviously, the first thing you should get is your Dungeon Master's Guide, but you should really check out Matt Colville's series on Dungeon Mastering if you're going to be a new Dungeon Master, especially if you're a new player and a new Dungeon Master. He's going to give you some great places to start. He has a series called Running the Game that is absolutely invaluable for a new DM. But let's get to the questions. Advice for a new player, submitted by G2W Sucks. I hope that G2W is not like a person. We don't endorse the names of the people whose questions we read. I'm new to D&D, and I never had anyone to play with at all. Never even actually did, and really want to get into it. I was hoping someone could give me some pointers and places I can play it and learn. So this is a huge question. We could spend the rest of the day talking about this, but we're going to give some very brief, basic insight on where to get started with Dungeons & Dragons.
It sounds like me. Me.
Yeah, Haley, I'd love to hear your insight as a new player yourself.
So this sounds a lot like me. I was a Penny Arcade fan who found Acquisitions Incorporated and followed those podcasts for a very long time, and always thought it would be super awesome to be able to like have a group to play with, and didn't really have any friends who were much interested. It's not really most of my friends' thing to play Dungeons and Dragons, and so I kind of just continued watching the podcasts, and eventually found through the C team found these lovely humans, and I have started playing Dungeons and Dragons with them, and it's very exciting to me. And so I hope that more people can find groups and find the same joy that I have found. Anyway, that was very emotional and sentimental. Moving on, I would say reading as much as you can, like, and kind of going to some of these resources that we talked about. I think that class guide, like I was saying, the Dungeon Crawl segment, I wish I had found that back when I was setting up my first character, because I think it is a really good and easy to process guide to basics on all the different classes, and will help you make some of your initial big decisions. And I would say the other thing that I have learned, don't agonize too much about trying to make all of the right choices, would be my biggest advice, because I did that. You'll be fine.
I have to say, for me, I've had some luck with my LGS, my local game store. We have I think like a regional coordinator in the area where I am at the local game store every couple weeks. And he would, take people's emails and contact info, and then if there was a game going or somebody looking for players or DMs or whatever, he could try to set people up. So I would recommend going to your local game store and seeing if they would be aware of people coming in to play in person, and just see if they can give you a local coordinator's contact info, or if they have a night that's for D&D, like a Wednesday or a Friday or whatever the schedule might be. I really like local game stores, so check yours out, even if you haven't been there yet. I think it's a good idea.
Absolutely. There is no replacing the communal aspect of having a good D&D thriving community nearby. It really helps you get into the game.
Indulge me while I whap my Xanathar's Guide to Everything that I bought at my local game store last week.
Indeed. There is one thing that I do think people underestimate, though, which is the fun and joy that can come from playing online. A lot of people, I do feel like, kind of put themselves into a box where they're like, oh, nobody plays around me. But really, playing online is a very fun alternative to playing in person. And there's a lot of people online. It turns out the internet is big. You can go to R Looking for Group, and they're always available for looking for local games and for games online. I found a group on R Looking for Group that I played with for over a year. And then joining D&D communities, hey, go watch the C Team, join the C Team Discord. I can guarantee you're going to find some really fun, engaged D&D players, and probably at least one or two of them are going to be wanting to play a game. If you're feeling like DMing, find a community for a show you like, find a series you like, find that community. Almost everybody's got a Discord now. Join the Discord and see what's going on. D&D players are often a lot more friendly and approachable and diverse than they used to be. I think that there's a lot of opportunities to play Dungeons & Dragons and a lot of different ways to play for different kinds of players. The most important advice for someone who wants to get started is just get started. I know it can be a little discouraging when you don't find somebody right away, or when it's hard to find a DM. Be the DM, take up that mantle. Sometimes you'll enjoy it, but if you don't, you'll at least meet some players, and hopefully through them you can continue this path towards the game that will last for a while. So just get out there and play, guys.
I would say that I was worried. I think part of what held me back originally was the worry that, like the perception of what I thought people were going to be like as a new player, that people wouldn't want to play with me because I'd have to be figuring out like what I was doing, and that I should try to like find some way to like figure out how to play Dungeons and Dragons before trying to play Dungeons and Dragons. But that is not the case. There are so many wonderful people within this community, and if you reach out, there are plenty of people who are more than willing to talk about the rules for a real long time.
Yes.
So
maybe too eager.
too eager to talk about the rules, but you will find some people out there if you reach out.
Yeah, and I'll say from my personal experiences, I love being somebody's first DM. There's nobody to be measured up against. I'd love to be the first DM though. It's such a delight to see the lights go on in somebody's mind as they realize all the potential and the opportunities, and as they start to connect to their character, and as they start to get invested for the first time, and as you see these monsters that you've never seen before, and as you learn all these strange abilities that monsters and enemies can have, and you start to see the depth and scope and breadth of the danger of the world, it really becomes exciting and investing in a way that maybe in later adventures it's hard to replicate. But I've truly enjoyed being your DM, and I think that for everyone listening out there, if you're invested in getting into D&D, you're going to find a DM who's just as excited to take you through an adventure. And if your DM isn't just as excited as that to take you through an adventure, they're not the right DM for you.
I think in every social situation, there can be that fear of like, well, if this doesn't work out, then I'm just stuck. I would say, like, let yourself be honest with like, okay, maybe this game isn't for me, or this group of people isn't for me. They like doing things that I don't necessarily like doing with their campaigns. It's fine. Just say, I think this would be a better experience for everyone if like I found a different game, and it's fine. They'll work it out.
Yeah.
Just because you're part of that story, they can fix it. It's better for everyone that like you accept that things might not work out and move along, rather than trying to force something to work and having it be not a positive experience for anyone.
As someone who continuously trolls our D&D and constantly sees the complaints about their DM running kind of game that they don't enjoy, or their DM did these weird things that they don't like, the advice is almost always talk to the DM or leave the game. And the response is always, but I can't leave the game, then I won't have a game. I promise you there are more games out there. And if there are not, if the game that you want to play in doesn't exist, you can make it. You can be the DM for that adventure. It's not going to be hard. It's going to be easy, and it's going to be fun. And you're going to have a great time, and you're going to meet cool
And if
people.
you have any questions on how to do that, tweet at us at InsightCheckPod. We can help.
We love talking about D&D, as you can tell. I had a little bit of a fun one here from one of our listeners, Rue. They have sent us a delightful question, and I just first wanted to say thank you, Rue, for listening and for being so excited about the show, and for tweeting at us and leaving comments and being super engaged. It's been a delight seeing all that, and honestly, you've made all of our days a little bit better, and we just really appreciated you, so thank you very much for being a part of this weird thing that we're making. But we wanted to answer your question, which was our favorite subclass and archetype. The favorite class and archetype, guys. Now, there's going to be a tendency here maybe to gravitate towards the classes we play. I would challenge you, if you want to just say the one that you play, maybe list your second favorite as well. Just that way you can kind of start to thinking a little bit about what you might like to play if you weren't playing what you're currently playing. So like for me, my favorite class is actually the fighter. Which may seem a little weird because the fighter is very basic. It's a very simple class. But I think what I like about the fighter is that it is so simple. When the restrictions are that severe, you really have to get very creative while playing that class. And I think that the Battle Master fighter, where you get all these cool combat maneuvers, and then you get a feat every 2 levels after level 4. So you can constantly be adding in new tools to your arsenal. You can be getting new feats with like Magic Initiate or Ritual Caster or Medic or Healer, or all of these different feats that can give you different ways to play your fighter and different abilities and tools. No 2 fighters are going to be exactly alike, and that's what I think I love about fighters. You can get this strange, varied character, and it can be very interesting. And then for archetype, of course, I already mentioned Battle Master Fighter. A Battle Master Fighter can command his allies, reposition them without provoking attacks of opportunity. He can heal them by shouting out encouraging words to his friends, disarming strikes and trip attacks and all sorts of other things to really mix things up. So whenever you get in combat, you have a lot of choices despite the fact that you're just the most basic class, the fighter. And that's why I think I really like it. So what do you guys think? What's your favorite class and archetype?
My favorite class is Druid, which I'm not currently playing. I'm currently playing a barbarian and a fighter, but I did play the Druid for quite a while. So I did Circle of the Moon, And the interest for me in that was to capitalize on all of the beast stats and the beast things that they can do, all the special things they can do, pack tactics, charging, all those special things. Circle of the Moon Druid, and I believe all the other druids can conjure animals, so you can basically make a little happy family of animals. So my druid, Jeraika, that was her name, she had some backstory with vultures, and so she would conjure vultures and then become a vulture and then have pack tactics, basically because I saw that ability in a list of beast abilities, and I was like, that would be a really cool ability to capitalize on. So I really like Druid and specifically Circle of the Moon, but with the new Circle of the Shepherd released in Xanathar's, I think that might be kind of like what I was going for, like a different flavor. And I'm also really interested in Circle of Dreams as well. That looks really cool. Additionally, I'm really, really, really interested in eventually playing the Cleric Grave Domain. That seems really cool. And Barbarian Path of the Storm Herald. So if I were to redo my character for our campaign, I think I would go Storm Herald, because that's pretty badass.
That sounds pretty cool. Some of that new Xanathar's content, there's some good stuff in there. We were talking about Grave Domain, and I think that would be very cool. As I think we chatted about, I really enjoyed the Garth Nix Abhorsen series
trilogy,
books you could
and
play.
Now all those other
The
books.
Old Kingdom. Thank you. I was like, all those other books, exactly. I was actually just re-listening to the audiobook the other day.
Every 12-year-old girl wants to be an Abhorsen when she grows up, right?
I did anyway.
Like a good aligned necromancer, like that's pretty cool.
It's pretty badass. So there's definitely some really cool new classes out there.
Yes, I also read book.
I also read book.
Do you have thoughts about book?
Yeah, I thought the part where the heroes overcame odds and defeated the villain was
I
really
thought
good.
you'd do many readings a day.
I
Many readings a day of all of them.
I heard a rumor.
yeah, can't you tell that I've read this book talking about the part where the good guys overcame tremendous odds and defeated the bad guys? So anyway, Haley, what were you thinking about your favorite subclass?
I was going to say that I don't have the background that y'all do with the D&D knowledges.
Ask me about Warlock, Haley. I have I know nothing about these Warlocks. Like, there are big holes in my knowledge about D&D, especially subclasses and things, so don't feel bad.
So, yes. Okay, that makes me feel somewhat better. But I am currently playing a cleric, except I couldn't decide when I was making my cleric. I was like, maybe I want to be a cleric because heals, maybe a ranger. Also, maybe druids could be cool because the animal thing. And so then I settled on nature domain cleric. So basically get a little bit of the best of both worlds. Why did you decide on
nature domain?
Well, I wanted to be like a druid and love the natures, and I also get to talk to animals and stuff and plants, which is really great. And I have really loved like that being kind of a non-traditional way to play a cleric. It's definitely still got that cleric flair to it, but it has kind of the flavor that I was looking for. I wasn't really looking to be like a priestess of the holy light type character. That wasn't really what was appealing to me. I liked the healing aspects and I liked the nature aspects, so I feel like I got the best of both worlds, because I did look into multi-classing and then I was like, I've never done this before, this is overwhelming.
Yeah.
I don't understand how this works.
A first-time player
like I will just
multi-classing in a spellcasting class is just about the highest level of difficulty that there is in character creation in 5th edition.
I couldn't figure out how I would do that without seriously like handicapping myself either. I'm sure there's a way to
No, this level of
do it,
play, it
but-
would be very hard to pull that off. That's a late game move for sure.
I was thinking, sorry, I'm going to start this sentence over again. In terms of other classes that I would like to play, I have been kind of brainstorming some other ideas. I feel like maybe if I try something else, the next thing I would do would be something totally out of the box for me. Like, I generally wouldn't gravitate towards like a fighter or a monk kind of melee heavy style character, but maybe the next thing I do will be something more like that to challenge myself.
Right, and it can just be, if you play a spellcaster for a while, it can be kind of exhausting having to keep up with all those spells and spell slots and spell levels and all that other stuff. Being able to just jump in and say, I attack 4 times, that's kind of relieving in a way. It's a lot less pressure when you're a monk because you have a very specific list of abilities, whereas with a spellcaster, you prepare your list of spells each day, and that list of spells can contain a lot of different effects.
That was something I was thinking today, is like playing a spellcaster is like wanting to play a class that essentially has a rotating selection of class features every day. That is precisely why I probably wouldn't ever play a non-caster class, or it wouldn't be my first go-to, because I love having that flexibility and just having, I find there's a lot of creative outgrowth, like we had talked about suggestion in a previous podcast. Like, there's so many creative ways to apply that spell or apply other spells, and sometimes it all depends on kind of what you can talk the DM into. Like bestow curse is another really good one, where it's like this effect, this effect, this effect, or whatever you can get by on your DM.
Hey,
Anyway, yeah. Hey, Jarika.
What's your favorite class and archetype?
Oh, that's a good question. We should answer that. I am playing my favorite class currently. I am playing a bard. I'm playing a College of Lore bard. Mostly because it really fit with the backstory, and I like the fact that they get to kind of customize their spell list so much through magical secrets and their awesome skill monkeys. I always kind of like the bard as kind of like the magical other side of the coin from the rogue. They're skill monkeys with lots of spells, as opposed to skill monkeys who are really good at stabbing people in the back. But I recently, to continue the thread of Xanathar's being the best thing ever, my bard, even though the College of Lore really worked with their backstory, he's kind of become more of a glam rock star sort of thing.
Gasp! I am so shocked.
Yeah, I know. He is a little egotistical monster who is in love with himself first and second and probably
last.
third and fourth, and a good ways down that list. Yeah, and last. But he, so when I saw College of Glamour in Xanathar's, I was like, oh, had we started this campaign, but a few weeks, months later, that totally would have been the route I would have gone, because it really has like just these great features for like playing the rockstar bard. Like I think the first feature it gives you is like you can use a bardic inspiration die to give the people around you like temporary hit points, and they can all move towards you without provoking opportunity attacks. So literally, like, you can have the fandom flock to you in the middle of combat as like one of their abilities. They also have the ability to like recruit townspeople or whatnot for like seeing their amazing performances. They can cast command for free as a bonus action.
You would give up level 6 magical secrets?
I would give it up if I could cast command as a bonus action for free every turn and just be like fawn. Just bask. There's one word.
True.
Yeah, just one word commands of just like love me. So
Adore
that would
me.
adore. Yes. So it had a lot of great flavor for that kind of rockstar bard, and I would love to play one day.
Who knows? Maybe you'll be playing one sooner than you think.
I mean, death lurks around every corner.
You are a great and powerful DM.
That's not exactly what I meant, but okay. Rue, I hope that answers your question. Our favorite classes.
Thanks for listening. You're amazing.
Heart Roo.
It's
Heart
true.
Roo.
We heart brew.
It's true.
I don't know if this will be relatable to anyone in this audience or fandom, but sometimes I find social interaction exhausting. And often I find the idea of it way more exhausting than the reality of it. Well, getting a little ahead of myself. So, Jazz Salad asks, any tips for getting introverted or nervous players to take more initiative, pun intended, and get more involved? So listen, I think I'm an introvert by the actual definition of introvert. I find social interaction exhausting sometimes, and I get very tired at the idea of interacting with people for long periods of time. But it often comes up before D&D games where I will just sit down and think, gosh, I am just so tired. I cannot do this. And then when I actually do it, I come out jazzed and wanting to do more. And only by playing for a very long time have I realized that this is just some sort of deception that my brain is feeding me, that it's telling me that I'm not capable of interacting when I really am. And honestly, I need to. I need to get that time in with my friends because it recharges my batteries. It gets me ready for the week playing. And it's just a lot of fun. So introverted and nervous people they speak to me. I can relate. And I'd love to give some advice for how to deal with that. So guys, what do we have? What's a great way to help introverted or nervous players take more initiative?
One of the things that I think has helped me in some situations and also helped others around me, not necessarily in a D&D situation, but I teach dance, and I have started being a little more open about my own internal feelings with my students. I teach college students, and I've had a couple of them say to me that like it's kind of helped them open up a little more, knowing that I just am not this like bubbly, outgoing person, and that sometimes it's hard and you can work through these things. And I'm not like calling anyone out or anything or making examples out of anything. I'm just saying like, here's how I have felt in this situation, and maybe you can relate, and here's how I've dealt with it. And it's sparked actually some kind of like on the side conversations after class, and it's kind of made me think that this could help in other situations as well. Just saying like, maybe you say like saying to your table like, hey, I know when I started playing sometimes it's hard to just jump right in, but like here are some strategies that I used for that, like that could help your players just feel a little more comfortable and like seen, like, oh yes, these are my people, this is a safe place.
I know that myself, I've been really lucky in that I have had friends who are interested, as interested as I am in playing, and so the in-person games that I've had, I've always like strung one of my friends or both of my friends along to play. And so if things get overwhelming, sometimes I will just like focus on like my friend and do some role playing with them, and it kind of you know brings it lowers the sort of the anxiety, at least for me. So if at all possible, I would recommend finding someone that you know to play with in a larger group.
I will say that I have probably struggled with social anxiety all of my life, most likely. So I want to say that I relate, and the introversion thing too. Those are kind of two separate but very deeply woven together things. The whole kind of like, are you afraid of interacting versus does interacting with others kind of drain you? I like my first, I fell in love with D&D out of watching Acquisitions Incorporated and getting into a bunch of online D&D streams and whatnot. And my first game, which I DM'd for, was with IRL friends, but we still played online. Kind of around my comfort level. I was just, and also just because we lived far enough away that it made the logistics of physically getting together somewhat of a pain. But yeah, so we played a campaign over a summer essentially, and then that we kind of called it in. We're like, okay, we did the D&D thing, and I think they were mostly done with it, but I was still jazzed. And I tried finding other people to play with online and whatnot, and I would go so far as to like prep campaigns meticulously in like Roll20, and then try to get people together. I got I got one group together to start going through Tyranny of Dragons, and after the first session, I called a halt to it because I knew people and I couldn't deal with it. So I've never actually played face to face with people before because I'm not so good at the being face to face with people in general, let alone in a D&D context where I think the best part of it is getting to be a little bit vulnerable and a little bit silly and putting on airs, putting on voices, inhabiting a different person who's very, in some ways like you, but hopefully in some ways different from you as well. But I don't think I could do that in a face to face meet space kind of thing. So my suggestion for this person would be if anonymity helps alleviate it at all, at least I can say it did for me. Of the internets, try playing online. Try finding a group in RD&D, or there's a good looking for group function on Roll20. There are a lot of D&D communities online. I met these lovely people through the Acquisitions Incorporated C Team fandom. So there are people out there who want to play D&D. They maybe even would like to play with you and really just give it a shot because it is as fun as you think it is, even though sometimes other people are scary.
That was a very valuable perspective, Air. Thank you.
It was. It was really good. Thank you very much for sharing that.
You did good.
I said things.
You said things that warmed my heart.
One of the other things that comes to mind, I can totally relate to the online interaction being a little easier and more accessible to me as well. Starting out, I thought about kind of finding a group through a local game store or something like that, but I was just really worried about it, and just having the little safety net of like, well, I can always just not be at my computer. I'm not like in a room with people and have to be like, I gotta go, guys, because I don't like any of you. Like,
yeah, been
definitely
there.
a little, just took that strain off a little bit, off of me. But I think that if even with the online games, if you are still feeling that hurdle, but you really want to give this a shot, something that I saw on Twitter today, we talked in one of our previous episodes about the wonderful Maz Mataz, who does some great crochet projects and loves the puns. Check her out on Twitter. Is looking to start a is looking to start a text-based game of Dungeons and Dragons, specifically with a mind to create an accessible and safe environment for people who really would love to get into D&D, but are kind of struggling with the anxiety piece. So currently looking into having people send messages in their direction about what time and forum would be best, and then going to try to put together games. So you should check out DM Lojack, that's DMLOJAAK on Twitter, and if you're interested, shoot Mataz a message and try it out. And I really hope that that this can help kind of bring D&D to a wider audience. And as someone actually mentioned, I'm just seeing on Twitter now, this is also a great accessible option for D&D since it's a very vocal thing. This could be great for people who are for the hearing impaired who also want to participate in our games. So accessibility all around. As we talked about, the D&D community is wide and wants to share this thing that we love with everyone, and so I hope you all can find a game that suits you.
Just some rapid fire advice if you have a non-vocal or non-super center stage player at your table. My first piece of advice would be to ask that player if they're having fun and if they'd like to be more center stage. Because what you may perceive as a problem may actually not be a problem at all. They may quite enjoy participating when they want to participate, but then kind of mostly taking the backstage. So this may be a situation where you're sort of projecting what you would enjoy onto someone else, which I've personally run into. I've had a player who, I still have a player in my Friday game, goes by the name of Duck. And Duck loves to listen to other people play D&D. And he doesn't really like to take the center stage. He will participate every now and then. When it comes to his turn in combat, he knows what he's going to do. And that's just the way he enjoys playing. And that's okay. If you just want to be at the table with some friends, listening to a story, and participating as much as you want to participate, that's just a different way of playing. If your DM is cool with it and you're cool with it, then that's great. Other rapid fire advice, maybe talk to them if they do want to take center stage more. Ask them for things about their character that you can draw into the center of the plot. Maybe do a small story arc that centers around that character. Maybe do something like initiative when you're doing social situations as well, so that you call on each person at the table and give them a structured way to engage with the story. It may help them to have a turn.
That's a really, really good point. I have felt sometimes that doing social things in initiative order would be helpful. That's really a good idea.
Yep, and I think that's actually an idea I stole from you from the episode where we talked about having a very large group. And that's basically my rapid fire advice. I think what everybody else has said here is incredibly helpful, incredibly useful, and it's always good to see what D&D is good at and what it does for different people. And I think it's a community and a friendship and a hobby that really transcends those simple confines to become something a lot more meaningful if you allow it. But it is so valuable, and it is such a wonderful game, and you should really stop listening to us and go play. And I think that's going to wrap us up for this episode.
So this has been the next fabulous episode of Insight Check. You can find us at Insight Check Pod on the Twitters. And please, if you have any D&D questions or would like to make any comments about the podcast, please hashtag Insight Check on Twitter. And if you could please leave a review for us on iTunes, we would really appreciate it.
Of course, again, our many thanks to Vince Vept for the awesome music, Never Stand Alone, which serves as our intro and outro. And of course, again, to Amy T. Falcone for the awesome chibi images of our faces, which adorn our site on Podbean, our Twitter feed, and so forth. Thank you for listening to this episode of Insight Check, and for listening to us answer your cues from our collective A's.
This
Was
Insight
Check. How can I watch? It's a podcast.